Stand strong, stand tall, when your back's against the wall. Gotta look deep within yourself, gotta rise above it all. When no one's there to comfort you, gotta push your fears aside.
Hello, my name is Shelley Ware, and I'm talking to two beautiful women today on a panel. But I would like to start by making an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to thank the traditional owners, the people of the Kulin Nation, and thank them for looking after the land and the skyways and also our waterways and keeping it beautiful for our future generations. And I would also like to pay my respects to all elders, past, present and emerging, that are watching today and listening and present with us today, and also to all other Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are watching with us around Australia and listening to what we are talking about tonight. So welcome to another Dardi Munwurro Community Forum. Tonight our topic is Blakfulla Lives Matter. So Aboriginal people have been fighting for our land and the rights since invasion. And these struggles have been magnified through the recent events in the USA. And we all certainly know that because we've been living it for the last few weeks. And tonight we'll be joined by three panels to discuss our fight for peace, justice and equal opportunity. So panel one, I will get around to introducing our guests, and we have Mariki Onus, and she is a Gunai and Gunditjmara woman from Bungyanda, currently working in the legal sector of the Aboriginal women's rights, and is the co-founder of the active organiser of Warriors of Aboriginal Resistance. Mariki has worked across many different issues that impact mob in Victoria, in particular prisons and deaths in custody. So welcome, Mariki.
Thank you, Shelley.
Thought we better say welcome. And April Watson, welcome to you too. She is a proud Yorta Yorta, Wemba Wemba and Barapa Barapa woman. She is the daughter of Tanya Day, who died in police custody in 2017. And April and her family have successfully campaigned for the abomination, oh, it's that word I can't say, abolition of public drunkenness, to include systemic racism in her mum's coronial inquest and for the referral of the Victoria Police to the DPP for criminal charges. So welcome to you, April.
Thanks, Shelley.
Thank you. So Mariki, let's start with you. So one of the encouraging aspects of the movement in Victoria over the past few years has been the emergence of young leaders like yourself. Can you tell us how Warriors of Aboriginal Resistance started and why it started?
Thank you, Shelley. That's a really good question. Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance started, I think, in 2015 at the G20. And it was a group of young blackfellas. The idea did come from Brizzy. A group of young blackfellas in Brizzy wanted to get a national movement going. I came on board and we launched Warriors of the Aboriginal Resistance at the G20 in Brisbane. And we've slowly built a movement on decolonisation and resistance and revival since then. But we're progressively growing bigger and probably more known for our work for our recent work with the Black Lives Matter demonstration and Invasion Day.
Yeah, fantastic. And how did you feel about the rally? Did you think that your message got across through there? Like, were you happy with the outcome?
I was really blown away by the response of people here in this country, and to be able to apply what happened in the US, Black Lives Matter in the US, to here, to our experience. Aboriginal people here are 7 times more likely to be incarcerated than African Americans in the US, and I don't think a lot of people can understand our experience with racist policing and murders at the hands of racist policing systems. So it was really good to talk about that.
Yeah, it was fantastic, and I think the message came across really strongly, and a lot of people really took it on board, which was fantastic to see. Now, April, at the time of your mum's death, Aboriginal women were 10 times more likely to be arrested for public drunkenness than Aboriginal women. Can you tell us a little about your mum's case and the fight to abolish public drunkenness, and does this do enough to cut the core of the issue of systemic racism?
I don't think it necessarily does enough to cut the core of systemic racism, but I think it's a good start. you have a look at public drunkenness. It was a discriminatory law for mob, and our people were constantly being targeted by it. Back in the Royal Commission nearly 30 years ago, that was a recommendation, and it was actually the law that our great Uncle Harrison Day was arrested for and also died in police custody. So you look, nearly 30 years later, Mum has been arrested and died for the same law. So it just goes to show how violent these laws and how dangerous they are for our mob. And, we had, it was a really tough and long fight to be able to get that law decriminalised, and we've had a lot of great support from community to be able to do that. And, there's just so many issues that the way our people have been policed, and even the way that the court systems are set up, and the coronials, and the failure to implement these recommendations, which are really breeding, really dangerous circumstances for our people.
Absolutely, that is so true. It's a really difficult conversation that every mother has with their child about how they are affected by the police and how to behave with police. Nobody wants to have that conversation, but it's a reality for Aboriginal people, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for sure. Now, in your mum's case, the coroner made an unprecedented decision to include racism in the scope and refer the matter to the Department of Public Prosecution to assess whether there had been an indictable offence. What sets your mum's case apart from others, and did you have a strategy?
So with Mum's case, we were fortunate enough for it to really get some landmark decisions that were made, and systemic racism was actually the first in the nation for it to be considered within a coronial inquest. And she had made the unprecedented decision for the public drunkenness at the first directions hearing, and then as well to have the 2 police officers referred to the DPP was the first time in Victoria. So we've had a huge number of Aboriginal deaths in custody, and there has not been one conviction. So we're really hoping that this time it's going to be different, because at the end of the day, if they're out here killing Aboriginal people freely and they're not being prosecuted for it, it will continue. And the thing that sets us apart isn't necessarily that we're out here doing more. It's that we had different resources, I'll say. We had really great community support that was able to push out our message and our mum's message. And the thing is that at the end of the day, if we're not in the streets, protesting and talking about these issues, mainstream media is never going to cover it. They hardly ever cover Aboriginal deaths in custody, and now Mum's has been covered by a lot of mainstream, but that is only because, us as a family has led that campaign, as well as the Aboriginal community, which has then branched out to the wider community. So at the end of the day, it's the fight from the Aboriginal people that make the change, and I think that when we talk about that, it's important for the rest of Australia to understand and get behind the Aboriginal families to be able to make, their heartache heard, and as well bring justice to their loved ones.
Oh, absolutely. People power is always proven along the way for Aboriginal people to make such a huge difference. So it's so great to see so many people. And you can feel the change in the air, can't you? Like, the world is definitely changing. How do you think, like in your mum's case, where, that racism was actually acknowledged, that played a role in your mum's death, what do you think that means for other cases coming forward? Even during the marches, we had somebody in Western Australia pass in custody. So what does that mean for future cases, and maybe looking back at other cases?
Well, this is why we fought so hard. It wasn't just about Mum and our family getting justice. It was, getting justice for the other Aboriginal families that had lost a loved one, but also trying to make the fight a little bit easier for them. And, the coroner actually allowing systemic racism was huge, but for her to acknowledge it in the V-Line conductor, Sean Irvine, was massive. But then it was also a disappointment that it was really, she fell short in acknowledging it with Victoria Police. the way that they treated Mum was like despicable, and we know that there was racism that played a part in that, because they put Mum in that divvy van, and then immediately after they went and picked up a white woman who had the police called on her for being heavily intoxicated, and instead they took that community approach. They drove her home. She got home safely. She didn't even actually get a fine, and during that time Mum was actually dying in that police cell.
That's absolutely just so heartbreaking to hear, and everybody is just so devastated for your family, and why we want to fight with you, and why we want your message and your family's message, and for this to stop happening. It just has to stop happening. So Mariki, the case of Tanya Day is just one example of how the justice system has failed us. The Royal Commission in 1991 hasn't changed things, so where do we go from here?
I just wanted to also echo on what April said and the role that community had. I think it's really important when we fight for these cases and fight for justice that our people have to get around the families that are going through this, and we have to centre their voices and elevate the voices and offer our institutional support and skills that we have. And that, I think that really saw a lot of the success the family had as well. And I would encourage community to, support each other through this, because it wasn't the support of any other institutional support, and it wasn't much else. It was the community and the family that fought for this. So I think it's really important that we organise and look after each other. And I think for where to from now is that families deserve not institutional support, but material support. It's really lacking, and it's really sad to see families all around this country putting out GoFundMes to try and fight for justice, when it hardly ever covers it. I remember Latona Dungay, David Dungay's mum, she'd only raised like $4,000 since 2018. And then when Black Lives Matter happened and what happened with George Floyd, they raised, upwards of hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that's rightly so, because every cent will go to fighting for justice for David Dungay. But before that, it felt largely ignored.
Yes.
And it's our job as community to get around these families and support them with whatever skill that we can bring to the table. And that's what our community did with Tanya Day's family.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think when you talk about the major change of the funding that we saw, that comes from the world noticing. The whole entire world noticed this, because the people in America had just had enough. And I think in Australia people just weren't listening as much as they should have been listening. And look, we've seen that focus go on Australia. So, as heartbreaking as it is of what happened with George Floyd, that was a moment that changed time, wasn't it? And it's impacted us as Aboriginal people, and I think we've lifted, but the rest of Australia has lifted with us as well. So, yes, it's not the best outcome, and nobody ever wants to see anything like that happen. But it feels to me like the Me Too campaign. Remember when that happened and the world changed? I feel like that's where we are in this time in history, that the world is changing, and we should get more out of what's actually happening. Is there anything either of you two would like to add that you feel like you needed to still say? They said they had lots to say.
We always do. But I think too, like when we talk about things changing, like for me, being a family member of, someone that's lost their mother, but also multiple family members from discriminatory laws, and, how violent the police is within Australia. We need to have a look at what we're asking. There needs to be a review of the Royal Commission, because those recommendations are still not implemented, and it's still really dangerous for our people. Police shouldn't be investigating police, because what we've seen in Mum's case was it was extremely biased, and it was a flawed investigation. Yes. They should be charged, whether it be first degree murder, second, third, criminal negligence. Like at the end of the day, they need to be charged. And there's a lot that we need to look at of how these organisations and institutions operate, but it needs to be done with the voices of the families.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that it would be really good to see the abolition movement be normalised within our communities, and for people to think about what role police actually play in our communities, and actually that they present them as a form of harm. And I think that we've got to come to the to the realisation that the police can't be reformed. That, you know, in Minnesota there's amazing campaigns to defund the police, and I think that that's something that we can learn here. Victoria Police and the correctional system, I think, get upwards of $3 billion in Victoria, and like housing and addressing poverty don't get nowhere near the same. And so we're throwing money into the same issue and it's just perpetuating itself. And I think that let's normalise abolition, let's educate ourselves and educate each other on what the role of police are in our lives, because they're taking our families away and we need to stop it.
Yeah. We certainly need to sit down and have big conversations about these things, but thank you so much for your time. It is so great to have you both here, and thank you for all of the work that you're doing. Like, you truly are changing lives, and for so many people out there, you're helping them heal, and you know, the work that you're doing is just wonderful. So thank you for being with us.
Thank you.
It's been a
Thank you,
pleasure.
Shirley.
So here is a song from Uncle Kutcher.
A song called Is This What We Deserve? I remember singing this at a place called Queen Elizabeth Hall on the Thames in London, and singing to the British and asking and posing the question, is this what we deserve as traditional peoples of the continent now known as Australia? And I found myself singing not of this place, but of that place, way across the seas, where the tall ships, ironically leaving the Thames and ending up in Botany Bay. And so the song called Is This What We Deserve? My mate, brother, Daniel J. Marquez. We've been here since time began. Our ancestors' footprints spread right across this land. We are but caretakers of this ancient land, but you still don't understand. Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Can you tell me now? Is this what we deserve? Your laws are so unjustified. Our basic human rights have been denied. You come up with excuses that your hands are tied, but go on committing genocide. Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? All I'm asking, is this what we deserve? But we'll just keep on trying while our baby they just keep on crying. Sadly, our people keep on dying, while the bureaucrats keep on lying. Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve? Can you tell me now? Is this what we deserve? Is this what we deserve?
Yes, and welcome back, folks. Welcome back to Dardi. My name is Jason Tamaru. You're the Order Man, and we're here, like we always do, acknowledge whose country we are on, and I acknowledge the Wurundjeri people as owners of this land and their creative spirit, Bunjil. Here we are again, folks. Another week, another day, another year of where we fight for equality and justice. I don't know about all you guys out there, but Black Lives Matter has really triggered me, triggered my emotions. It's triggered a lot of history. Talking about yesterday, when we were kids, and also up to my adult life today. And it gets so frustrating to see these things repeating over and over again. And we all have troubles dealing with some heavy stuff in our lives, and Black Lives Matter is no different. And because we're here at Dardi, we're talking about Aboriginal Lives Matter. And I've got a couple of gentlemen. We're gonna talk about what Black Lives Matter to us as blackfellas, and work out ways of how we may deal with it, ways of going forward, and how we're feeling at the present. So, I'd like to introduce a couple of fellas, a couple of gentlemen beside me. First of all, Mr. Kutcher Edwards, welcome.
How are you, Jace?
I'm feeling, I'm in and out, mate, to be honest, but we'll talk more about that in our discussion. And of course, Mr. Ross Morgan, how are you going?
Yeah, good, Ross. Yeah.
Welcome on board.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, deadly. So, like we always do, we always put a little bit of a background. We all know how we do it, people out there, background of who we are, where we're from, our mob, and so on. So, maybe I can start the first question with that. Maybe over to you, Kutcher.
I'm a mutti through my father, Yorta through my mother, Nari through my great-grandfather, Jeremiah Kirby. But firstly, could I just say, whilst the women were talking before, Jason, we were sitting in the boardroom and watching not only Shelley and the way that she conducted the yarn, but listening to April and Mariki, their grandparents, their parents would be so proud of the way they are fighting the fight. And I do have to apologise. I didn't introduce myself to April, and with this COVID-19 and coronavirus, and we can't interact the way that we used to prior to coronavirus, but I just wanted to give her a cuddle, and we can all articulate through this thing the word hole, the mouth, and we can
we can speak the speak, but sometimes the spirit needs to talk.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give her a cuddle, not only from me as the individual, but me as the representative of my family in the moment in time that I could be the physical manifestation of my family and give April, hand over the Edwards family spirit to her. And what an amazing, you don't envisage yourself to be a spokesperson for your family, but in times of crisis, sometimes you've got to stand up and say, and you look at, not to be disrespectful, she probably goes to her mum's grave and, what do I need to do, Mum? What can I do to speak on your behalf? And she's doing it. She and her whole family are doing it. And Mariki is doing what her great-grandmother, Auntie Edna Brown, still continuing, the fight. And I remember as a kid coming to Melbourne and going to cabarets, and them old aunties sitting at the table at Collingwood Town Hall and collecting that, those $5 to bury our people, And what a tribute Mariki is to that memory, following the memory of her great grandmother, and so even though I couldn't hug April, the Edwards family spirit walks with her every step of the way, and we're talking about Blakfulla Lives Matter, and it affects us all, Jace. It affects us all.
Yeah, and I think, you touched on a point which we're going to definitely discuss, which a lot of times gets overlooked in discussion, and that's the spirit side of who we are, our identity, our culture, our connection to the country. So we'll talk a little bit more about that.
Cool.
How you going, Ross?
Yeah, good, Ross.
So it's good to see you, mate.
Yeah, thanks.
A little bit about yourself, your mob, and
I'm Yorta Yorta. My mum's was Yorta Yorta, grandfather. I had a great-grandfather was Gunda Chamara, and a great-great-great-grandfather was Tanarong, so I'm a bit spread all over Victoria, part of New South Wales. And look, I just want to congratulate the girls too. That was great to watch and great to understand. I actually knew Tanya personally. She worked for us at the Mayor Living Free Healing Centre, and as a cook, and her partner at the time was a cleaner. So it was really sad to see what happened there. My journey has been probably no different from a lot of people growing up in my era, like the 60s and 70s.
Yeah,
and
it's a good way. Let's talk about what's brought you here, and I guess always your background, which we've already spoken about, your cultural connection.
Yeah.
But maybe the journey as you was a young man to a little bit older and so on to get where we are now. Because your story it's a good one, mate.
Yeah, no, it's a long one, and it's still going, and I tell you, it doesn't get any easier as you get older. It's still a battle, and especially to see what's happening today with our people and the deaths in custody, and not only the deaths in custody. There's more Aboriginal people dying outside of prisons and jails and custody, so that's a worry too. My journey was the same as most of the guys around my area, Shepherd and Maribna. No opportunity, very little opportunity, lots of racism, and we'd always have a drink and party, and eventually I found myself in Fitzroy. That's where I met Kudge and his brothers, and we all kind of gravitated to Melbourne. Then I haven't gone back to live. I've always stayed down here, but I'll go back visiting pretty regularly. But no opportunity, lots of trouble, and you know, like ended up in inside a few times, you know, like, and eventually it came to an end. I was at an age old enough to think that, you know, I don't want to do this no more, and it didn't happen by accident. There was like a few near-death experiences, and I thought, shit, I want to be around for my grandkids.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah, and you know, at that point, I don't think I had any grandkids, but I knew I had at the time 5 beautiful children.
So were you battling something, mate? Just to tell everyone that's watching this, what were you battling? Some type of demons or?
No. There was no demons. It was the way it was. Like we kind of
was substance or something? Was it or anything?
Well, there was various substances along the way, but most of the time we were partying. And look, underlying trauma. There was plenty of underlying trauma from separation from mum and all that kind of stuff, and transgenerational trauma. So our people go down that road, and look, any substance is better than feeling that the loneliness, the grief, the loss, and you know, like, so, you know, it just became a way of life for a lot of people. There was no opportunity. It wasn't until I got down there and hit a brick wall a few times, and eventually kind of got it, and went to the health service and was able to get a job. You know, like simple, just cleaning floors to start, and now I'm a manager of a residential program here connected to Dardi, Nagara Jaranuth, men's residential program. Manage that, and there's plenty of years of working in drug and alcohol. I was drug and alcohol counsellor for quite a few years, 6 years or more, and done a lot of volunteering around, you know, like working in prisons and doing recovery programs and that, and it was about 5 years of that, and we run the Mayor Healing Centre as well for about 8 years, and so it was a journey of, once I've kind of started my healing journey, trying to heal other people. I worked for a long time with Link Up Victoria as well, with VACA, and really long journey, and when I got to the level I was at, I was given plenty of opportunities, you know, to keep going.
That's great, and you know, it's finding that almost centre, that spine, that backbone, which helps provide some structure. And I guess, you know, when you're partying or dealing with stuff, at times you're in some bad places. Sometimes it takes you away from that constitution, that spine, that link, and once you step away from it, you know, you do get in trouble. But it sort of brings me back now to, I guess, this centre, which I know I use myself, and just speaking to you both earlier, we're all very similar. And this is the spirituality, the cultural component of our being, in our DNA, who we are as people in this country. And you know, they've got a lot of shrinks out there, a lot of experts in this area that, and also people that run programs, you know, to support, I guess, everyone. But a lot of those programs don't really feel or connect with us as blackfellas, to our country, to our laws, to our spirituality, to our connection to country, and so on. And you know, a lot of some of our viewers out there, they might be searching for some medicine. You know, that cultural, spiritual medicine to get back on track, to especially after being triggered by Black Lives Matter, and you know, the deaths in custody, and what happened to George Floyd over in America, and so on. So, yeah, spirituality. I'm interested. Do you know? Maybe I'll go to you, Kutcha, first. You know, do you use? What's your thoughts on spirituality, and do you use that sometimes at these heavy times?
when a question like that is posed, you go back, way back in the iPad. I call this the iPad upstairs. And I try to pull out the files of memory in here. And as a child, you know, being taken, and I understand when we speak, or you speak, Rossi, and the trauma that we carry of our childhood, and when I try to go back in my iPad and pull out the files, and I was forced into religion as a child, and we'd have to say prayers when you sat down at breakfast at the dormitory. We lived in a cottage called Kawinda, and we were forced into saying grace. And then at dinner, we went off, we got sent to school, came home, had your little afternoon tea, was called afternoon tea, and then dinner would come and you had to say grace at the table again, and then at night when you went to bed you had to kneel down beside your bed and now I lay me down to sleep, I pray the Lord my soul to keep, and in the morning when I wake, I can't remember the rest of it, but it was religiously indoctrinated, not in my memory but in my spirit. And then I went to live with my mother in Traralgon, and it's a whole new different ball game, and what was yours, personal belongings, is now ours. And you learn this different way of life, and you learn to share, and so when I talk about my learnings and then come down to Melbourne and immerse myself in this concept of community control and the ideology of us blackfellas deciding for ourselves, not being told what is good for us, and that's all educated, and it's the learnings are not really to do with spirit or culture, but then you get the opportunity to travel. And I've travelled the world, and I've travelled this place now called Australia, and immerse myself. And we were talking, you know, off air and going up to sacred country, but all this place is sacred country. Even, you know, Flinders Street Station was probably an area where blackfellas did whatever alongside the Birrarung, alongside the river. And you try and articulate what comes from the mind out the mouth again, but we as Aboriginal people have to start speaking from way down here, way down in our spirit, and that's what, when I walk into a space, I try not to bring just the physicality of me.
Yeah.
I try to bring a notion of spirit, and I want to walk in the spirit of my father, and I want to walk in the spirit of my mother. And we were talking before, Jace, that when my use-by date expires, I'm not scared. I'm not scared to go, because I want to see my nana again.
Wow.
I want to be immersed in. I want her to cuddle me. I want my grandfather, Ted Edwards, to be proud of me. And I will do everything in my power while I'm on this place to make, my children and my grandchildren and anybody who walks with me, I want them to know that I've done as much as I can, not for me, but for my people and therefore my country. And it's hard to articulate. It's hard it's hard to hand over one's spirit, because some people say, "Oh, you're talking Scheisenhausen," But I don't need affirmation from external forces. I want affirmation from my ancestry, and then I know that I'm on the right path.
Yeah, it's interesting, like, just in what you're saying about your parents, the old people, cradling you and acknowledging you, and it's they do that, I believe, in a spiritual sense, and I would imagine you would feel that on a lot of times, and even I would assume you'd possibly call on that in those times of when you're vulnerable, Coach.
Yeah. My mother went in on the 5th of June 2006, went to her dreaming. But I ask for her guidance every day.
Yeah.
I wake up and, Mum, I have the conversation with her. And mightn't mean anything to anybody else.
It's,
but I need her guidance.
And that's what we're talking about, folks. We're talking about spirituality, and, we all got these triggers that puts us into dark places, and what we're talking about is calling on something that helps us through these difficult times, and what we're talking about here is a little bit about that spirituality, that connection. So thanks, Coach. What about yourself, Ross? In these times, man, when things are dark, or when things get triggered through this Black Lives Matter, and you see all the protests, and you hear the stories of the deaths in custody, and people that you just spoken about, some people that are close to you. What methods do you have through cultural spirituality that helps you maybe get through these hard times?
I believe in the strong spirit of our ancestors, as Kudge was talking to. They're always going to be there with us, and they're always waiting for us. I always believe that. And through my darkest days, back when I was getting off heavy drugs and that was over 22 years ago, I believe in God. I believe in Bunjil. I believe in Bayami. I believe in Creator. And it's all great. As long as I've got that belief, I'm safe. I'm going to be safe. I know in a lot of days I'd lied a lot about, changing, but never changed it through, like God. But once I connected to my ancestor spirit and made a commitment to change, I knew they were going to be there in the dark times. So I always believe in that connection. I always believe in God. Now my young daughters, they pray every meal, and I love that, because, like Sky and Maddie and John and myself and Rach, we make sure we pray. And I feel safe because they've got a belief in something outside of themselves. I believe that they believe in the spirit. So, that, a lot of our people are lost that connection and lost their way spiritually because of... be it drugs, be it alcohol, be it trauma, and don't really understand it, So I regularly pray, I regularly meditate, and that's only started back. That was one of the biggest saviours back in the day when I was going through that hard time. I'd meditate a lot and connect to whatever country I was. I remember I was up at Coffs Harbour one day, and this awakening happened to me in Coffs Harbour, and that's right off country. That's not my country at all, you know what I mean? So it doesn't matter where you're at and what you do, you can connect spiritually, So it's a choice, though. You can do the hard yards or you can do the easy yards, you know what I mean? Like it's the easiest way is for me to connect and let go. I think I was in rehab once, probably for about the fourth time, And an old guy, mate of mine, Johnny Shep, you wouldn't mind me mentioning his name. I said, John, nothing's changed, and this is about 8 weeks, like off everything. And he said, Ross, just let go and let God. You're trying to rule the world, and I said, is that how easy it is? And I just done that, let go and let the ancestors. I turned it over to my ancestors, and it just got easier and easier and easier and easier for me. So I know when I'm not practicing my spiritual principles that I start to run bad. Things start to fall apart, and I'm not coping well. So I'm straight back to what works, and not everyone's got that, and it's not in our community.
Yeah.
But what we're doing at Nagara and Dardi is we're trying to get guys onto their healing journey, and start their healing journey. It's a hard act to follow, but you've
got to give it a go.
Got to get if you hit the brick wall a few times, you kind of wake up,
And that's the thing, we all know what the brick wall's like. I mean, I know I've hit that brick wall many times, and you look for answers, and our generous panelists, these great men, have been very generous in guiding us through spirituality that which you call on when you're in these hard times. And to a lot of you out there, you might be wondering how do you do that? Well, it's just, you can call out, you can close your eyes anywhere, and just talk to something, and once you start talking to something, you'll realise that something is something real, and that something real has all these good principles that are within them, and we all know we all know those bad principles. We're not all angels, but we all know the bad principles. But what we're talking about is the good elements within that. When you close your eyes and you're looking for that guidance, that spirituality. These are the things. This is what we all can do. We can go to that place and just look for that spiritual guidance. And be comfortable to go to that place.
There can be so much noise in silence.
Yeah.
If you listen deeply.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just knew in my darkest hour that my ancestors were with me, and if I turned to them, and every time it got harder and harder, I turned to them, and it was easier. So I know my ancestors with me. I know the Creator's with me. So it's the choice to go there. You know what I mean? I had to be at a dark place to get there. But you don't have to be there.
Yeah, it's handing over, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's handing over your spirit and to them old people, because they'll guide us.
Because what we do is run on ego, and that's pushed by trauma, grief, loss, and bang.
Well, geez, so much to learn, so much to unpack there, and some really good guidance. So I'd like to thank both of you.
All good, cuz, you're right.
Absolutely magnificent. On behalf of the viewers and everyone else that are here, they've gone to listen, thank you. Thank you very much for your time and for your wealth of knowledge. It's much appreciated. Looks like we're now going to... check it out, Kutcha. We're going to go to
I'm going to the other part of the
you want to do the cross?
office,
you want to do the cross?
I'll do the cross. Ladies and gentlemen, could you please watch intently to some guy who's going to sing you some random song.
You want me to sing with you? Or?
You sing with me.
Thank you.
This next song is a song that I wrote many years ago, the same as Is This What We Deserve. I remember working at the Fitzroy Stars Youth Club in Fitzroy alongside a very staunch, strong Gunditj Mara man by the name of Jock Austin. And it's interesting that I'm sitting in the offices of Dardi Munwurro and bumping into other strong Aboriginal men in Bootsy Thorpe and Alan Thorpe and nephews, Corrie Thorpe, and we're all searching for a purpose. We're all wanting to make a better tomorrow for our people. And Jock was one of those people who taught me what it was to be a strong Aboriginal man in the inner city of Melbourne. And so I sat down. Jock would always say, and my older brothers would always say, Kutcha, it doesn't matter how many times you get knocked down, it matters that you get back up. And so I sat down and wrote this song, Get Back Up Again. Marayire, Marayire, Nyenga Den, Nabu Nanalai. Just so many times I've had to stand and fight. So many times I've been told it'll be alright. It don't matter if you get knocked down and suffer so much pain, as long as you can find the strength to get back up again. As long as you can find the strength to get back up again. It is better to have tried and failed than never tried at all. For when that battle sounds, we'll all answer to the call. So many years in a drought without rain, we must come together to get back up again. We must come together to get back up again. I will build my soul. I will build my soul. Get on, 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 get on. Just so many times you can go to the well. Just so many lies all those politicians can tell. I will bear my soul. I've got much more to gain. You can knock me off my feet, I will get back up again. You can knock me off my feet, I will get back up again. I will bear my soul. I will bear my soul. Get back, get back, get back, get back, get back. Get back, get back, get back, get back, get back. Get back up again. Get back up again. Get back up again. Get back up again. As I do now, folks, I'm getting back up.
Beautiful, Uncle Kutch, and beautiful words too that you said about the first panel. So kind of you to speak about those beautiful young women. So thank you for sharing your soul and for sharing your soul in the last panel as well. It was beautiful. It was quite emotional, and I hope that everyone took something from that. And we have our third and final panel for the evening, and I would like to introduce Millie Telford. And Millie is an Aboriginal and South Sea Islander woman from Bundjalung country, and is the National Director of the Seed Indigenous Youth Climate Network, and works towards building a national grassroots network of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander young people to protect our land. So welcome, Millie. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. It's really special to be here.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty special, isn't it? We're just talking, we wouldn't mind doing it around a fire next time.
Yeah,
eh?
I love the fire.
Yeah, we'll have to do that next time. Now, Laura, welcome to you too. Laura Thompson is a proud Gunditjmara woman. She is a living artist and working in Melbourne. Laura is the managing director of Clothing the Gap, and I have a whole wardrobe of her t-shirts, and if you don't, you need some. And an Aboriginal owned and led social enterprise. And she is also the managing director of Spark Health and the designer and maker behind Kuru Circle earrings. And makes and designs beautiful jewellery, and I have a stand full of them, so I keep my bank balance very empty with her. So welcome, Laura. It's great to have you here.
Thanks, Shal.
Yeah. So Millie, let's start with you. Tell us why you started the SEED Indigenous Youth Climate Network.
Yeah, well, starting SEED, I think the story really goes back to our history of our mob and the fact that our people, Indigenous people here in this country, but also around the world, have been looking after country for generations. You know, it's something that is, you know, country is who we are, it's our identity, and looking after country is a part of our responsibility as, you know, our cultural responsibility. And so, you know, when it came to starting SEED, it was all about recognising that, but also recognising that in a modern context when we're faced with climate change, we, you know, have some incredible environmental organisations out there across the country, but, you know, for too long our people's voices have been missing, and, you know, it's our mob who are on the front lines of the destruction of country, from the digging up and of coal and gas and, you know, extractive mining industries that are fueling the climate crisis and fueling the, you know, impacts that communities in the Torres Strait are feeling, communities who are healing from the awful bushfires that we saw over summer, communities that, you know, are experiencing, like the list goes on. And so it's that recognition that First Nations people need to be leading when it comes to protecting country and building solutions to climate change. And so really, you know, the why myself and all the young mob across country have been building up SEED is to continue that responsibility that we have, but also to make sure that our voices are heard on issues that impact us.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said about the Blakfulla voice coming through. It taken me, I remember I was recently in London, and I was walking around London, checking out all the sites, you know, and I was moving towards the Queen's Palace, you know, where everyone goes. And anyway, I seen a lot of drumming going on and a lot of noise, and I thought, oh, hang on, there's some type of protest going on, you know. So I headed over there to see the action. And of course, everyone was talking about the environment. But what I find, and what I find really frustrating is, and you know, it's got a lot to do with, I guess, my own history, wide history in this own country, was listen to people talk about the land, the trees and the rivers and animals and the sky and everything like that. But they were coming through a different sort of context, through a different lens, through a different voice. And I understood what they were talking about, but emotionally and spiritually I wasn't connecting to it.
Absolutely.
And yeah, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the feeling that I got. You know, I have a memory of walking into a conference of young people, over 1,000 young people in Brisbane when I was at high school. And, you know, it was really, really powerful because I'd been involved in the environment group at my school, and we'd been, you know, talking about what getting solar panels look like and doing recycling and all of that. But I walked into this room and, you know, it was all these people that cared about climate change, but from this perspective of talking about, you know, reducing carbon dioxide and this and that and all these things. And I was like, hang on a second, like, I'm here because, you know, I've seen, you know, the coastline at home be eroded by these huge, you know, cyclones and increased, you know, just sea level rise and all of that. And like, really, for me, this issue is about community and people and loss of culture and loss of country. And that's so different to how, you know, how people are talking about the environment and talking about our land, and anything to do with us, we need to be at the table. And so I think, that's really what we've been doing at SEED over the last few years, is connecting with our mob in a way where, climate change has been seen as a really white issue to a certain extent, and it's a political issue that gets talked about, and it's really far from what's on people's doorsteps right now. But I think what we've been working towards is connecting the dots between the issues that our mob are facing and how the root causes of climate change go back to, the root causes of all the issues that we've addressed even tonight on this panel around, colonialism, white supremacy, capitalism, the patriarchy. Like, it's all about how humanity is taking without giving back and treating people differently to others, and that goes completely against our values as Indigenous people, and we need to reframe the way we talk about these issues, I think.
Yeah. So that leads into the next question. Where does it fit? We have covered some of them in this question, but where does it fit in the movement for Aboriginal justice and land rights fit into that story?
Yeah, so something that we often talk about is climate justice, and I sort of just touched on it. It's the recognition that climate change is more than just an environmental issue. It's an issue of social justice and brings the injustices in the world to the forefront. I think for us, a really big part of what we do with communities, we've been working with remote communities in the Northern Territory, and other places across the country, but, up in the NT, fracking is a really big issue, like gas fracking. Yeah. And I think what this comes back to time and time again is when our mob haven't been consulted properly about what's happening on our land. And so, we push for the rights of Indigenous people to free, prior and informed consent. Because, too many times big mining companies have come in and, it's that typical divide and conquer mentality. And, you can't blame our communities when we're in positions where there aren't many other alternatives. Of course, people, can be put in a position where you've got to think about what's happening right now. But when, we talk about really make sure that people have access to the information about the long-term impacts as well as the short-term, and, what an industry like fracking would mean for water, for bush medicine, for everything. Like, the flow-on impacts are endless, and what it comes down to is that right to free, prior and informed consent and rights of Indigenous people, and that's all really connected. And I think the question touched on like land rights, and I think we've got a long way to go in this country. There's a false conception out there that our mob have land rights and we don't. No. Right now it's just a tick box approach, and that's not okay. We need to have control of our own land.
Have you seen the film Undermined? Have any of you seen Undermined?
I've heard of it. Have you?
You must watch the film Undermined, and you can get that online. I think it's FanForce TV. I watched that the other week, and it really talks about what you're talking about people think we have this land, but Aboriginal communities have land that they cannot borrow against, that they cannot sell, and so how are they meant to build in their community a wealth for the next generation? It's literally impossible. And it talks about that divide and conquer, and you see that in the film Undermined. So I highly recommend that you watch that, because it really, really, really highlights what you're talking about. And it just shocking what is actually going on still today, right now in 2020. And I know we say that a lot, but it actually blew my mind. But thank you for all the work that you're doing in SEED, working with the younger generation on this. I really feel like they've got it. Like, I feel like I'm just waiting for them to rock up and just come on in for a whole lot of things we've talked about tonight, and I think we've talked enough about how the world is also supporting as well, which is fantastic. Now, Laura, your work with Clothing the Gap and the Koori Circle and Spark Health, very busy woman, is inspiring, and it's an example of the importance of self-determination for us. What drives you and inspires your work?
Yeah, I guess when I sort of think about self-determination, I've thought about it a little bit. And we think about the word self. Actually, when I think about self-determination, the first thing I think about is Aboriginal people controlling Aboriginal affairs. And that's actually not about self, and that's about us. Yeah. So when we flip that and we start thinking about us determining, we use self-determination a lot, but it doesn't really fit when we think about what the work we do. Yeah. So I flipped that and I started to think about us determining, and
I like that a lot. That's like what Uncle Kutch was talking about. You know, that everything we do is for the next generation, is for the people that are going to walk after us.
And I think sometimes we can take those words we say a lot and break them down and say, what does it actually mean for us? And that's why I love enterprise, and that's why I found myself using business as a model to do the work that I care about. I'm a health promotion practitioner through and through. I care about my health mob, but I just wanted to find different ways to fund the work. Over and over again, I'd say, look, you need to, and Jason and I have worked together on tobacco, because I was funded to talk about tobacco in the northern region. I got sick of talking about tobacco in the northern region, but that's where the cash was. And I thought, well, what if I could make my own money through business, and then we could determine what that health program looks like. And I do like design and fashion, I always have. And one of those reasons is I like to see Aboriginal design in community. I like the visibility of statement pieces, celebrating culture. And it was also a way for the non-Indigenous community, I guess, to buy into Aboriginal culture, celebrate it as their own, like they should. Not their own, but they're part of
it's part of their history and culture as well.
Absolutely. And it takes a lot of convincing actually to get them to buy into it, because they're still not quite comfortable. But like that's part of the work that we do,
Oh, it's absolutely wonderful, isn't it? So so what does, you explained to me what self-determination, but you want to talk about the Free the Flag. Let's talk about that campaign that's going on.
Oh, here we go. Free the flag. Those of you who don't know what's going on, is maybe Laura could speak a little bit more about it. But there's a little bit going on about the the flag, the red, black, and gold flag. We all know what it is. We can't shy away from it. It's the flag, and we all think that who owns this flag? Who's got the right to the flag? Do we have to us as blackfellas? Do we have to pay for it when we march down the street, or seeing family, or just want to represent ourselves? Do we have to pay for that, or should we pay for it? Should the money go to one person? Or there's so many things going off. But Laura, we all know, and some of our viewers don't know. I'd imagine that you're going through a bit of you use the word us. You're going through a battle in regard to this flag issue. Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Usually I should have worn my Free the Flag shirt.
I nearly did.
I guess this design that I'm wearing now is an alternative to the Aboriginal flag at the moment, because we've chosen not to pay to use it, because for those who don't know, it's the only flag in the world that's copyrighted. So, flags are probably the most public assets that you'd have in countries and nations. Yet our flag, unfortunately, and it's really sad to say, this doesn't belong to any of us, but it's owned by one man, being Harold Thomas. So we produced some T-shirts with the flag on them, and we received a cease and desist that said, you're not able to do that. And we said, look, we just think that this is a ridiculous law. It's ridiculous that the government's allowed us as Aboriginal people to have to fight to use our flag, and that
it's crazy when you think about it, because when I buy red, black, and yellow gear with a flag, and especially if I see someone from a mob selling it, they might be selling it for double the price, but I'm going to give them the money, because you know where the money's going, right? So you're happy to contribute to what's going on, and to hear the money isn't. That what you had to go, what that what you call it?
Cease and desist.
That's heavy. That's heavy words.
Look, even if you go to buy a flag from Flag World, who they're a licence holder to use the flag, you're paying 20% more for the Aboriginal flag than the Australian flag. So this is basically about equal flag rights in this country, and it's been upsetting to watch that when we produce flag T-shirts, we wanted to see more black flags in the world, but as a result of this copyright, we're seeing less black flags. And big agencies and organisations like AFL and even just local community teams are choosing not to put the Aboriginal flag in places, and that's really sad to see.
Well, they can't. It's not that they're choosing unless they pay WAM Clothing, which we know are the company that own it. And Google WAM clothing, and you're not going to be buying anything with a flag product anytime soon. But but people can actually come to you and get the Free the Flag little logo if they wanted to put that in front instead of a flag.
So the Free the Flag logo is available for download, and anyone can use it if they want to use that as an alternative to make a statement. But the sad thing about this is for lots of people, it's not just flag T-shirts, but it's like if you have the email signature, if the flag at the bottom of your email signature, you have to pay for that too.
Yes.
Are you for real?
Yes.
I'm serious. Digital license.
Yes, you do. You have to pay for that as well. It's absolutely everywhere. And so when you're going to buy a product, if you ask the people when you're buying it if they actually are paying money towards WAM clothing, which is what I do, then I say no thank you. So I'm not going to be a part of that. And I think we all have to get behind that. We heard that from Mariki. We have to have people power in this situation, and you're doing some great work in government around that, but it really is up to the people, isn't it, as well?
We've got a petition. The petition 2 weeks ago was at 50,000 signatures, and we got that tabled in Parliament. With this movement, with people wanting to use their voice and stand up during this Black Lives Matter, we've had an additional 30,000 people sign that. So I guess that does make a difference. People writing to their MPs makes a difference, and people informing themselves and having these conversations in their own circles makes a difference too. The other thing that I've really noticed briefly is that big companies have come on board the campaign, and they've used their platform to elevate the issues that matter. I guess to Millie and I, like Lush shared the Free the Flag campaign, Sports Girl, companies that I never thought would have. And I think when we talk about our deadly allies, people using their platform to elevate Aboriginal voices certainly is one way that people can help create social justice in this country.
And what about in the SEED Foundation? How can they help you? How can people support you?
Yeah, I mean, so many ways. I think for any mob out there, get involved, particularly young mob. We actually, so at a time like now in 2020, our original plans, we were going to be hosting a really big gathering of young mob from all over the country, and that was one of the biggest things I was looking forward to this year. And everything's just had to change, right? And we've all been in it. But one thing that I'm excited about is we've launched a Protect Country online fellowship. So bringing young mob together online, no matter where you are. We're making sure people have access to technology to still have that connection and support, but also a space to learn and talk about how we create change together ultimately. So talking about things like community organising and campaigning and leadership and all of that. So that's kicking off tomorrow night actually, and then we've got a few more rounds. Really keen for people to get involved. But also one of the biggest campaigns that we are running is, as I mentioned, working with communities in the NT fighting gas fracking, and with the Northern Territory government having given the green light to that, to say yes, we've turned our focus to the companies that are wanting to frack. So Origin Energy, which many people might be customers of Origin Energy, some might even be shareholders. Basically anyone has a really powerful voice to stand up. We've time and time again we take action targeting our government, but when it comes to these big corporations who have I guess big stakeholders, whether they be through their retail arm with customers or their corporate with shareholders and their staff, there's ways that we've seen this sort of campaigning work. We saw the big banks, NAB, Commonwealth Bank, ANZ, all those big Australian banks commit to not funding the Adani coal mine in Queensland. That was some of the work that SEED was a part of a few years ago. And so stories like that give us hope that we can take on a big fossil fuel company like Origin Energy, standing with communities on the ground who are saying they haven't consulted with us properly, we don't want this to go ahead. So in solidarity, we're bringing Blackfullas and non-Indigenous people together to take action. So yeah, if people want to hear more, I think heading to our social media or our website.
I don't know about you, but I feel like I need to lift my game tonight.
Yeah, no, your game's lifted. I got to. But
I feel like I've got some work to do, Jason.
Well, I see it usually just like what's going on, with what's going on with people when we're talking common sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, this is something not crazy people talk about. This is just normality, normal stuff that we're talking. You're talking about looking after the earth.
Yep.
This is for everybody.
Yeah, clean air, water.
You're talking about a flag that represents all of us, and there's people want to dispute that and, take control of it and through greed and money. It just doesn't make sense to me.
Does not make sense, and I think that is a perfect note to finish on. Sometimes the world does not make sense, but we can make a difference. We can certainly get all of our people power behind all of the things we've talked about tonight. It's been brilliant to hear everyone's voices, and you've done a fantastic job.
Some you, Sally.
Thanks you. Just fishing. No, just kidding. Thank you both to the two of you for sharing your stories with us. It's been brilliant. And thank you to you, the audience, who have listened and been a part of this. And we've loved your comments on social media. It is brilliant to see them. We've watched, when we were in the boardroom watching yours, we loved them and we look forward to reading them tonight. You have any questions, reach out to us on social media and make sure you get behind these campaigns and take care out there, because it's been a hard few weeks, hasn't it? Okay? Everyone's soul needs some healing, so take some time for yourself. Take care.